I stood at my front door, frozen, staring through the peephole at two elderly figures on my porch. My parents. They looked fragile, hunched, clutching what appeared to be medical folders. My hand hovered over the doorknob but wouldn't move. Behind me, my 14-year-old daughter Emma sat curled on the couch doing algebra homework, alive and thriving. My hand dropped to my side. I stepped backward. The memory crashed over me like a wave. 7 years ago, they refused to save her life, but spent $370,000 on my brother's wedding. 7 years earlier, everything changed on a Tuesday morning in April. I was 31 years old, working double shifts as a nurse at Community General Hospital, trying to make ends meet as a single mother. Emma had just turned 7, all gap-toothed smiles and wild brown curls that bounced when she ran. She was my entire world, the reason I pushed through exhaustion and struggled through each month's bills. But that spring, something started going wrong. Emma began complaining about being tired all the time. Not regular kid tired, but bone-deep exhaustion that had her falling asleep at the dinner table. I noticed bruises appearing on her arms and legs, dark purple marks that seemed to materialize overnight without any explanation. Then came the nosebleeds, sudden and frightening, staining her pillowcases in the morning. As a nurse, alarm bells rang in my head. I took her to our pediatrician, Dr. Stevens, a kind woman who had seen Emma since birth. She ordered blood work immediately. The waiting period for those results felt like drowning. I went through the motions at work, checking vitals and administering medications, while my mind spun with worry. When Dr. Stevens called me into her office 3 days later, I knew before she spoke. Her face carried that careful, practiced expression medical professionals learn, the one that prepares you for devastation. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. All childhood cancer. The words hit me like physical blows. My baby girl. My Emma. The doctor's voice continued, explaining treatment protocols, survival rates, chemotherapy regimens. I heard maybe half of it through the roaring in my ears. She was 7 years old. She should have been worried about spelling tests and playground drama, not cancer. The treatment plan was aggressive. Chemotherapy would start immediately. There was hope, the doctor emphasized. Childhood all had good survival rates with proper treatment. But then she mentioned something else. An experimental treatment protocol at a research hospital in Boston. It had shown significantly better outcomes, fewer relapses, higher long-term survival rates. The problem was, insurance would cover the standard treatment, but not the experimental one. The out-of-pocket cost for the experimental protocol was $80,000. I had $12,000 in savings. That was it. Years of scraped-together emergency funds, tips from extra shifts, birthday money carefully hoarded. It wasn't even close to enough. That night, after Emma fell asleep, I sat at my kitchen table with a calculator and my bank statements, trying to make impossible math work. I called the hospital's financial services. They offered payment plans that would take decades to repay. I researched grants and assistance programs, filling out application after application until my eyes burned. Finally, I picked up my phone and called my parents. My father had owned 3 successful car dealerships before retiring. They lived in an affluent suburb 40 minutes away, in a house worth well over $1 million. They took cruises twice a year and played golf at an exclusive country club. Money had never been an issue for them. I explained everything to my mother over the phone. The diagnosis, the treatment options, the cost. My voice cracked as I begged. "Can you come over tomorrow?" she asked. "We should discuss this in person." Hope flickered in my chest. I arranged for a neighbor to watch Emma and drove to their house the next evening. Their home always made me feel small. Vaulted ceilings, marble floors, expensive art on every wall. I sat on their pristine white sofa while they settled into matching armchairs across from me. The coffee table between us felt like a canyon. I laid it all out again, showed them the medical reports, the cost breakdown, explained why the experimental treatment offered Emma the best chance. I tried to stay calm, professional, presenting it like a business proposal, but desperation leaked through. They listened in silence. When I finished, they exchanged a long look, one of those married couple communications that happens without words. My father cleared his throat. "Elena, you know we love you and Emma, but we simply don't have that kind of money available right now." I stared at him. "What?" "Things are tight," my mother added quickly. "The economy, you know. We have our own expenses, retirement to think about. $80,000 is a tremendous amount, but the house alone." I gestured around us. "That's equity, not liquid assets," my father said firmly. "We can't just pull money from thin air. Have you looked into payment plans? Fundraising? There are options." I felt like I was falling. "Emma might die without this treatment. Your granddaughter." "The standard treatment has good success rates," my mother said. "The doctor said so yourself. This experimental thing is just that, experimental. Maybe you're being swayed by panic. I'm a nurse. I understand the statistics. Then you understand that you're asking us to drain our resources for something unproven." My father's tone had shifted, becoming harder. "We raised you to be independent, Elena, to solve your own problems." I couldn't breathe. "This isn't about independence. This is about Emma's life. And we wish we could help, sweetheart, we really do." My mother reached across to pat my hand, a gesture that felt more dismissive than comforting. "But we simply cannot afford it. You'll have to find another way." I left their house in a daze, tears streaming down my face as I drove home. My phone buzzed at a red light. I glanced at the screen through blurred vision, a text from someone named Courtney with a photo attached. "Wedding venue options, elaborate and expensive looking." The caption read, "Can't wait for the big day. Your parents are so generous helping us plan everything." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Courtney, my brother Derek's fiancée. I had forgotten about the wedding coming up. The light turned green. I drove home to my daughter, who was fighting for her life, while my parents planned a party. 2 weeks crawled by. Emma started chemotherapy, the standard protocol. I watched my vibrant little girl become pale and nauseous, her beautiful curls falling out in clumps on her pillow. I held her while she vomited, wiped her face with cool cloths, and smiled even though my heart was shattering. Then came the family dinner invitation. My mother called, insisting I bring Emma. "It's important," she said. "Family news." I almost declined. The thought of sitting at their table, pretending everything was fine, made me sick. But a desperate part of me hoped maybe they had reconsidered. Maybe this dinner was their way of announcing they would help after all. I dressed Emma in her favorite purple sweater and a soft knit hat to cover her bare head. She looked so small, so fragile. At their house, Derek and Courtney were already there, both glowing with health and excitement. We gathered around the dining table, expensive china and crystal glasses catching the chandelier light. My mother served roasted chicken and asparagus. Emma picked at her food, having no appetite. I barely ate, my stomach in knots. Halfway through the meal, my father cleared his throat. "We have wonderful news to share." Derek and Courtney beamed at each other. "As you know, Derek and Courtney are getting married this fall," my mother said, her voice bright with joy. "And we've decided to give them the wedding of their dreams. We're fully funding everything," my father announced proudly. Courtney squealed. "It's going to be absolutely magical. We've booked the Seaside Grand Resort, you know, that luxury property on the coast. 200 guests, a designer gown from New York, live jazz band, gourmet 7-course dinner. The cake alone is costing $8,000, Derek added, laughing. My fork clattered onto my plate. The total budget is $370,000, my mother said, looking at Derek with pure adoration. Nothing but the best for our boy. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table. $370,000, I repeated slowly. We know it's extravagant, Courtney giggled. But Derek's parents insist. They're the most generous people. I looked at Emma, who sat quietly beside me, her face pale under her hat, dark circles under her eyes. Then I looked at my parents. You told me you couldn't afford $80,000 to save Emma's life. The table went silent. But you can afford this, I continued, my voice rising. A party. A single-day celebration. $370,000. My father's expression hardened. Elena, don't make a scene. A scene? I stood up, my chair scraping loudly. My daughter is dying and you said you couldn't help. But a wedding that you can pay for? That's completely different, my mother said sharply. A wedding is a milestone, a family celebration. And frankly, dear, your situation is largely a result of your own choices. I stared at her. My choices? Having a child without a stable partner. Working a modest job instead of pursuing something more lucrative. We've always had to help you, bail you out. Derek, on the other hand, has made responsible decisions. He has a good career, a wonderful fiancé. He deserves this celebration. Emma deserves to live, I said, my voice breaking. Courtney spoke up, her tone condescending. Maybe if you had planned better, saved more, you wouldn't be in this position. It's not anyone else's responsibility to fix your problems. Derek said nothing, just looked down at his plate. We love Emma, my father said. But we cannot and will not liquidate our assets for an experimental treatment when there are other options available. This wedding is a different matter entirely. It's an investment in Derek's future happiness. I felt Emma's small hand slip into mine. I looked down at her. She was crying silently. Come on, sweetheart, I whispered. I gathered our things and walked out, Emma's hand in mine. No one followed us. No one apologized. Behind us, I heard Courtney say, well, that was dramatic, and nervous laughter followed. In the car, Emma's quiet voice broke the silence. Mommy, why don't Grandma and Grandpa love me? I pulled over, unable to see through my tears. I unbuckled and climbed into the back seat, pulling Emma into my arms. They do love you, baby. They're confused. They're wrong. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it anymore. That night, after I tucked Emma into bed, my phone rang. The hospital. Emma's latest blood work showed her numbers were getting worse, despite the chemotherapy. The oncologist was frank. They needed to start the experimental treatment immediately, within the next 2 weeks, or Emma's chances would drop significantly. The standard treatment wasn't working well enough. I hung up and stared at the wall. I had $12,000. I needed $80,000. And my family was spending nearly $400,000 on a party. Desperation makes you creative. I launched a crowdfunding campaign the next day, pouring my heart into the description. I shared Emma's story, posted pictures of her before she got sick, smiling and full of life. I shared it everywhere I could think of. Social media, neighborhood groups, nursing forums. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Friends from work donated. Former classmates I hadn't spoken to in years contributed. Strangers sent $20, $50, $100. Messages poured in, praying for Emma. Stay strong, Mama, shared with everyone I know. Within 3 days, the campaign reached $15,000, then $20,000, then $35,000. I watched the number climb with desperate hope. We were almost halfway there. Maybe, just maybe, we could do this. Then, suddenly, the donations stopped. Not slowed down, but stopped completely. And the comments section, which had been full of encouragement, turned vicious. This is a scam. Just another person looking for a handout. Irresponsible mother trying to profit off her sick kid. Report this fraud. My hands shook as I scrolled through the hateful messages. Where were they coming from? I started investigating, clicking on profiles. Many of them were connected to Derek and Courtney's social circles. People from their country club, Courtney's sorority sisters, Derek's business associates. I called Derek. He answered on the 4th ring, sounding annoyed. What are you doing? I demanded. Your friends are destroying my fundraiser. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, Derek. These are people you know, calling me a scammer, a fraud. Emma is dying, and you're sabotaging the one chance I have to save her? Silence. Then, quietly, Mom and Dad asked us to. My blood ran cold. What? They said you're embarrassing the family, begging online, airing private business. It makes them look bad, like they're not taking care of their own. Courtney's parents saw the campaign and questioned why our family wasn't handling it privately. It's causing problems. Emma's life is causing problems for you? That's not what I meant. Look, I'm sorry, but you need to take it down. Handle this some other way. You can't just expect the world to solve your issues. You're spending $370,000 on one day, and I'm asking strangers for help to save my daughter's life. And I'm the problem? It's their money, Elena. They can spend it how they want. I hung up on him. 2 days later, the crowdfunding platform suspended my campaign, pending an investigation into the fraud reports. The $35,000 I had raised was frozen. I filed appeals, provided medical documentation, but the process would take weeks. Weeks Emma didn't have. I borrowed from everyone I could. My coworkers, my neighbors. I took out loans with predatory interest rates that I knew would bury me. I sold everything valuable I owned. By the end of the week, I had scraped together $53,000. Still $27,000 short. Meanwhile, social media was filled with wedding updates. Courtney posted daily. The dress fitting, the menu tasting, the floral arrangements. Each post showed price tags that made me want to scream. The wedding day arrived on a perfect Saturday in September. I wasn't invited. Of course I wasn't. But I saw every moment of it online. The ceremony overlooking the ocean. The reception with ice sculptures and champagne fountains. Courtney in her $15,000 designer gown. The live band playing into the night. Tables draped in silk. Centerpieces with exotic flowers flown in from South America. That same evening, Emma collapsed. Her fever spiked to 105 degrees. I rushed her to the emergency room. They admitted her to the ICU. Her little body was giving up, the cancer spreading despite the chemotherapy. I sat by her bedside, holding her burning hand, listening to machines beep. At 9 o'clock, I called my mother's cell phone. She answered with music and laughter in the background, clearly at the reception. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Emma's in the ICU. It's bad, really bad. The doctors aren't sure she'll make it through the night. Please, just come. Just visit her. She keeps asking for you." "Oh, Elena." My mother sighed. "This is Derek's special day. We can't just leave the reception. We're in the middle of the father-daughter dance. Can't this wait until tomorrow?" "She might not have tomorrow. Don't be so dramatic. Children are resilient. We'll come by the hospital tomorrow afternoon. I promise." The line went dead. Emma didn't die that night, but it was close. So close that I signed a do not resuscitate order at 3 in the morning, sobbing so hard I could barely hold the pen. I couldn't watch them break her little ribs trying to bring her back. I couldn't. My parents never came the next day, or the day after. They called once, 3 days later, to say they were exhausted from the wedding festivities and their honeymoon coverage for Derek and Courtney, and they'd visit when things calmed down. Emma stabilized, barely. The doctors gave her 2 weeks, maybe 3, without the experimental treatment. I was out of time and out of options. I was standing in the hospital cafeteria, drinking terrible coffee and staring at nothing, when the social worker found me. Her name was Janet, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and sensible shoes. "Mrs. Elena? Can we talk?" I wasn't a Mrs., but I didn't bother correcting her. I just nodded. She sat down across from me. "I've been reviewing Emma's case. I know the experimental treatment is out of reach financially, but there's something else you might not know about. A pharmaceutical research program through Johns Hopkins. They're running trials on a new protocol for pediatric all. If Emma qualifies, they cover all costs." I looked up, afraid to hope. "What's the catch?" "It's a trial, so there are unknowns. but the preliminary results are very promising, actually better than the experimental treatment you were trying to fund. The catch is, the selection process is competitive, and they need participants to commit fully to the protocol, which includes extensive monitoring and follow-up. I'll do anything. Within 48 hours, I had filled out mountains of paperwork. Emma was evaluated by a team of specialists. Her case was severe enough to qualify, but her overall health was good enough to withstand the trial protocol. We were accepted. The treatment began immediately. It was brutal. The medications made Emma violently ill. There were procedures and scans and blood draws multiple times a day. I quit my job to be with her full-time. We spent 3 months living in the hospital. I slept on a cot next to her bed, held her hand through the worst of it, and tried to be strong while my heart broke over and over. But it worked. Slowly, impossibly, it worked. Emma's numbers started improving. The cancer cells retreated. After 6 months, she was in remission. I should have been celebrating. Instead, I was losing everything else. Without my job, I couldn't pay rent. We were evicted from our apartment. My credit cards maxed out. My bank account drained. The debt from those predatory loans crushed me. Even though the trial covered Emma's treatment, there were other costs. Transportation to appointments, food, basic necessities. It all added up. I filed for bankruptcy. At 32 years old, with a daughter barely in remission, I was financially destroyed. We moved into a cramped studio apartment in a rough neighborhood, all I could afford with my ruined credit. I picked up sporadic nursing shifts when Emma was stable enough, but it was never enough. During those 6 months, my parents never visited, never called. I saw their lives continue on social media. Derek and Courtney's honeymoon photos, 5-star hotels in Paris, gondola rides in Venice, beaches in Greece. The envy I felt was poisonous. I stopped trying to reach out. What was the point? They had made their choice. Meanwhile, Derek and Courtney's rumor campaign had done its damage. Friends from my old life distanced themselves. Some believed I was a scammer. Others just didn't know how to deal with the messiness of my situation. People are uncomfortable around tragedy. They stopped calling, stopped inviting me to things. I was isolated, broken, and alone except for Emma. But Emma was alive. That was all that mattered. She got stronger every day. Her hair grew back, darker than before but still curly. She smiled again. She laughed. She went back to school, a year behind but determined. One afternoon, about 8 months after Emma's remission, I ran into my mother at a grocery store. I was reaching for generic cereal when I spotted her in the next aisle, pushing a cart full of expensive organic products. She saw me and froze. We hadn't spoken since that awful phone call from the ICU. "Oh, Elena." She looked uncomfortable, trapped. I heard Emma pulled through. "That's wonderful news." I stared at her. She looked the same. Perfectly styled hair, expensive clothes, manicured nails, not a mark of stress or worry. "We've been so busy," she continued, not meeting my eyes. "You know how it is. Time just gets away from you. You didn't even send a card." "Well, you seem to handle everything fine on your own. You always do. You're so independent, so capable. We figured you had it under control." The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. She made it sound like a compliment, like my trauma was somehow proof of my strength rather than evidence of their abandonment. "Besides," she brightened, "we have such exciting news. Derek and Courtney are expecting a baby. We're going to be grandparents." The words hit me like a slap. Emma was already her grandchild, but apparently that didn't count. "Due in March," my mother continued, oblivious to my expression. "Courtney's already decorating the nursery. We're helping, of course. Nothing but the best for our first grandbaby." I walked away without another word. I left my cart in the middle of the aisle and walked out of the store. 2 weeks later, legal papers arrived. Derek was suing me for defamation. Apparently, I had told several mutual acquaintances the truth about what happened, about the wedding and the refused help and Emma's near death. He claimed I was spreading malicious lies that damaged his reputation. The lawsuit demanded $50,000 in damages. The papers listed my parents' attorney as his legal representation. They were funding this too. I couldn't afford a lawyer. I couldn't fight it. I ended up settling, signing a non-disclosure agreement that prevented me from discussing the situation with anyone. The settlement was $5,000 I didn't have, added to the mountain of debt already crushing me. That was when I realized I couldn't stay anymore. Not in this town, not in this state, not anywhere near these people. As soon as Emma was strong enough, we were leaving. 7 years passed like a long, slow exhale. Emma was 14 now, thriving in ways I had once thought impossible. She played on her school's soccer team, maintained a spot on the honor roll, and had a smile that could light up a room. Her cancer was a memory, something we acknowledged but didn't live in anymore. Every annual checkup that came back clear felt like a small miracle. I was 38, and my life looked nothing like it had during those dark days. After hitting absolute rock bottom, I made a decision. I went back to school online, taking classes while Emma slept, building toward something better. I specialized in pediatric oncology nursing, then got my consultant certification. I knew that world inside and out, every nightmare of it, and I decided to use that knowledge to help other families navigate what I had survived. I started a small nonprofit from our tiny apartment. Just a website at first, offering guidance on fundraising, connecting families with resources, helping them understand treatment options and financial assistance programs. It grew slowly, word of mouth, one grateful family telling another. Then I wrote a book. Using a pseudonym to protect Emma's privacy, I poured everything into it. The fear, the betrayal, the impossible choices, the moments of hope. I wrote about the system's failures and small kindnesses, about what I learned and what I wished someone had told me. I called it When Insurance Isn't Enough, a mother's guide to childhood cancer advocacy. I expected maybe a few hundred people to read it. Instead, it hit a nerve. Parents facing similar nightmares found it, shared it, reviewed it. It climbed bestseller lists. Suddenly, I was getting speaking invitations, consulting requests. The nonprofit expanded. I hired staff. We helped hundreds of families, then thousands. The money from the book and consulting allowed us to move. We left everything behind, drove across the country, and started over in Colorado. Mountains instead of coasts. Clean air, fresh snow. I bought a modest but comfortable house with a yard where Emma could practice her soccer drills. We built a life there, just the two of us. I deliberately cut all contact with my family. Blocked phone numbers, email addresses, social media accounts. I changed our last name legally. We became ghosts to them, and it felt like freedom. Occasionally, news filtered through distant relatives who didn't know I wanted silence. Derek and Courtney divorced 3 years after their expensive wedding. Apparently, the marriage was troubled from the start, all flash and no foundation. My father's car dealerships were sold during the recession. Derek made poor business investments and lost everything. The family's financial situation had deteriorated significantly. I felt nothing when I heard these things. Not satisfaction, not pity, just nothing. They were strangers to me now. Emma knew the whole story. I had told her when she was old enough to understand, not out of bitterness, but because she deserved to know why she didn't have grandparents or an uncle in her life. She processed it with the wisdom of someone who had faced death too young. She didn't ask about them anymore, didn't seem to miss what she'd never really had. We were happy, genuinely happy. Emma was applying to colleges, dreaming of becoming a doctor. My nonprofit was thriving. I had friends, a community, a purpose. The trauma of those years had shaped me, but it didn't define me anymore. Then, on a Thursday evening in October, the doorbell rang. Emma was sprawled on the couch, working through algebra problems and complaining good-naturedly about her teacher. I was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. The sound of the doorbell made us both look up. I walked to the front door and peered through the peephole. My breath caught. 2 elderly people stood on my porch. It took me a moment to recognize them. They had aged so much. My father leaned heavily on a cane, his frame shrunken and bent. My mother looked frail, her hair completely white, her face deeply lined. They were holding manila folders, the kind that hold medical documents. I froze, my hand on the doorknob. They rang the bell again, knocked softly. "Mom?" Emma called from the living room. "Someone at the door?" I found my voice. Nobody important, just solicitors. I kept watching through the peephole. My mother spotted the Ring camera mounted beside the door. She moved closer, speaking directly to it. "Elena, please, we know you're there. We can see your car in the driveway. It's your father. He's very sick. We need to talk to you. Please, honey, please." Her voice cracked. She looked desperate, broken. I didn't move, didn't respond, just watched through the peephole as they stood there. They waited for 20 minutes. My father leaned against the porch railing, clearly exhausted. My mother kept looking at the camera, her eyes pleading. Finally, they gave up. I watched them walk slowly back to their car, climb in, and drive away. "Who was it really?" Emma asked when I returned to the kitchen. She was standing now, watching me with those perceptive eyes that missed nothing. "People from our past," I said quietly. "They don't matter anymore." But Emma knew. Of course she knew. The grandparents who let me die? They didn't let you die. You're here. No thanks to them. She walked over and hugged me. At 14, she was almost as tall as me. "You okay?" "Yeah, baby, I'm okay." But I wasn't sleeping that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling that old anger stirring. They had no right to show up here, to invade the life I had built from the ashes of their betrayal. The next day, Derek found me at work. Security called to tell me there was someone demanding to see me in the lobby. When I came down, there he was. He looked terrible, thinner than I remembered, poorly dressed, with dark circles under bloodshot eyes. Nothing like the confident, successful man from 7 years ago. "Elena, please, just 5 minutes. How did you find me?" "I've been following your nonprofit's work. Your book. I figured out it was you. I'm sorry for showing up like this, but you blocked us everywhere else. Please. It's about Dad. It's serious. I have nothing to say to you. You're the only one who can help." Security was waiting for my signal. I could have had Derek removed. Part of me wanted to, but another part, maybe the nurse in me, needed to know. "You have 5 minutes. Outside." We walked to a small park across from my office building. Derek moved like a man carrying heavy weight, shoulders slumped, defeated. "Dad has end-stage kidney disease," he began without preamble. "He needs a transplant. He's been on the list for 18 months. Nothing. They're saying without a living donor, he probably won't make it another year." I waited, saying nothing. "I'm not a match. Mom's too old and has her own health problems. They did the family tracing, realized you were the only other option. We tried to find you for months before I tracked you down through your work, and you think I'm going to help. I know we don't deserve it. I know that. But he's dying, Elena. Whatever he did, whatever we all did, he's still your father. He stopped being my father when he chose a party over his granddaughter's life." Derek flinched. "You're right. You're absolutely right. But please, just think about it. Just get tested. If you're not a match, fine. But please try." "No, Elena. I spent 7 years rebuilding my life from nothing. Do you know what you all did to me? To Emma? We almost died. Both of us. Her from cancer, me from despair. I lost everything. Everything. Because your wedding was more important than her life. And now you want me to save him? I know it's asking too much. It's asking everything." I stood up to leave. "I sabotaged your fundraiser," Derek blurted out. "Me and Courtney. Mom and Dad asked us to. They said you were embarrassing the family. I spread those rumors, got people to report your campaign. I destroyed your chance to save Emma because I cared more about how things looked than about her life. I've hated myself for it every single day since. I turned to look at him. Tears were streaming down his face. That wedding ruined my life too, he continued. Courtney only wanted the money and status. We were divorced in 3 years. I made stupid investments trying to maintain that lifestyle. Lost everything. I've been living in Mom and Dad's basement for 2 years. They lost most of their money too. The dealerships failed. They're barely scraping by. Good. You have every right to feel that way. But I'm begging you, not for them, not even for him, but because I know who you are. I've seen the families you help. I read your book. I know it's yours. You save kids like Emma. You became exactly what they needed when they refused to be that for you. And I'm asking you to save someone who doesn't deserve it. I know how insane that sounds. Get out of my sight, Derek. He left his phone number on the bench between us and walked away. I didn't sleep for 3 nights. Derek's words haunted me. The look on my parents' faces through that peephole haunted me. Emma's question haunted me. The grandparents who let me die? On the 4th day, an email appeared in my inbox. From my mother. The subject line read, "Please read this." I almost deleted it. My finger hovered over the button, but something made me open it instead. It was long, detailed, desperate. My father's kidney function had dropped to 8%. He was on dialysis 3 times a week, barely able to function. They had been on the transplant list for 18 months with no matches. His doctor had suggested reaching out to estranged family members. They knew I was a nurse, hoped I would understand the medical urgency. The email detailed his decline, the symptoms, the suffering. It painted a picture of a man paying for his choices, with his body shutting down, organ by organ. It ended with, "Please, Helena, I know we haven't been there for you. I know we failed you, and Emma, in the worst possible way. But he's your father. He's dying. Whatever anger you have toward us, and you have every right to it, please don't let him die. Just get tested. That's all we're asking. Just see if you're a match. Please." I sat staring at the screen for an hour. Then I typed one line. "You let your granddaughter almost die. Figure it out yourselves." I hit send and closed my laptop. But Derek didn't give up. He showed up at my house 2 days later. Emma was at soccer practice. I saw him through the window, standing on my porch, and something in me snapped. I stormed outside. "I told you no." "I know. I'm not here to change your mind. I just need you to understand something." "I understand perfectly." "No, you don't. You think this is about them deserving help. It's not. It's about who you are." He looked desperate, wild. "I know what we did. All of it. The wedding. The refusal. The rumors. The lawsuit. I know we destroyed you. I know Emma almost died because of us. I know all of it." "Then you know why my answer is no. But are you really going to let someone die out of spite? Is that who you want to be?" "He let Emma die out of pride." "What's the difference?" "The difference is, she didn't die. Because you wouldn't let her. You fought when everyone else gave up. That's who you are." "I'm also someone who protects herself, and her daughter, from people who hurt us." Derek sat down on my porch steps, his head in his hands. "Do you know why they really chose the wedding over Emma?" "I don't care. Courtney's family is old money. Her father threatened to disown her if the wedding wasn't lavish enough to maintain their social standing. She convinced me our future depended on it. I pressured Mom and Dad. They took out loans they couldn't afford because I was their golden child, and they couldn't bear to disappoint me. It was vanity. All of it. Stupid, cruel vanity." I leaned against the porch railing. "That doesn't make it better. It makes it worse." "I know. They prioritized appearances over substance. They valued me over you because I fit their image of success. They failed Emma because helping her would have meant admitting they couldn't also fund the wedding, and that would have looked bad. They're terrible people who made terrible choices. So why are you here defending them?" I'm not defending them. I'm asking you to be better than they were. Better than I was. I am better. I saved my daughter. I built a life. I help people. I don't owe them anything more. Derek looked up at me. You're right. You don't. But I've been following your work for 3 years now. I've seen the families you help. Families exactly like you were. And I've watched you give them the support and resources you never had. You know what that made me realize? I didn't answer. You could have become bitter. You could have turned your pain into hardness. But you didn't. You turned it into purpose. You save kids. That's what you do. It's who you are. Those kids are innocent. He's not. No, he's not. None of us are. But if you let him die when you could help, you'll carry that forever. Not guilt toward him. You don't owe him that. But guilt toward yourself. Because you'll have become someone who lets people die when you have the power to save them. Even terrible people. And that's not who you are, Elena. My eyes burned. You're asking me to give a kidney to a man who let his granddaughter almost die. Do you understand how insane that is? Yes. Completely insane. And completely you. The woman who fights impossible battles and wins. The woman who saves people even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I hate you all. I know. We deserve that. He stood up. I've been volunteering with pediatric cancer organizations, trying to do something, anything, to make up for what I did. It doesn't. I know it doesn't, but I'm trying. And I'm here to tell you that whatever you decide, I'll accept it. If you say no, I'll tell them to never contact you again. I'll make sure they leave you alone forever. But I had to try. I had to ask. Because Emma's alive today because you wouldn't give up. And I had to give Dad the same chance, even though he doesn't deserve it. He walked to his car, then turned back. You told me once that Emma asked why her grandparents didn't love her. Do you remember? I nodded, throat tight. What did you tell her? That you were confused, that you were wrong. What will you tell her about this? When she's older, when she asks why you let your father die when you could have saved him, what will you say? That he didn't deserve it. And will that be enough? For her? For you? He drove away. I stood on my porch as the sun set, watching the sky turn orange and purple. Emma came home from practice, sweaty and happy, full of stories about her day. We made dinner together, laughing about something stupid her friend had said. She hugged me goodnight and went to her room to study. I sat alone in the living room, staring at nothing. Derek's words circled my mind like vultures. Not the parts about my father. I didn't care about saving him, but the parts about who I was, who I wanted to be, who Emma saw when she looked at me. I had built my entire life on being someone who fights for life. Every life. That was my purpose, my identity. The woman who wouldn't give up. The woman who found ways when there were none. The woman who saved people. Could I really turn my back on that now? Even for someone who deserved nothing from me? I didn't have an answer. Not that night. But the question wouldn't leave me alone. I spent 3 nights lying awake, wrestling with something that shouldn't have been a question. Emma found me at the kitchen table at 2 a.m. on the 3rd night, staring at nothing. Can't sleep? She asked, sliding into the chair next to me. Just thinking. She was quiet for a moment. At 14, she understood more than I gave her credit for. It's about them, isn't it? The people who came to the door? Yeah, your parents, my grandparents. She said it without emotion, just stating facts. Emma, you don't have to think about them. I know, but you do. She reached over and took my hand. Mom, can I tell you something? Always. I remember being sick. Not all of it, but pieces. I remember being scared, and I remember you never leaving. You slept on that terrible cot next to my hospital bed for months. You held my hand through everything. You saved me. My throat tightened. You saved yourself, baby. You fought so hard, because you taught me to. You showed me what it meant to not give up, to keep fighting even when everything's terrible. That's who you are, Mom. That's who you've always been. Where are you going with this? She squeezed my hand. "You told me what they did, how they chose a wedding over my life, how they spent all that money on a party while I was dying. I understand why you hate them." "I don't hate them. I just don't care about them anymore. But they're here now, asking for help. And you're thinking about it. I can tell." I looked at my daughter, this incredible young woman who had survived the unsurvivable. "How do you feel about it?" Emma thought for a long moment. "I used to be angry. When I was younger, when I first understood what happened, I was so mad. I couldn't believe grandparents would do that. But then I got older, and I watched you. I watched how you helped other families, how you built something good from something awful, how you turned your pain into purpose. That's different, is it? You taught me something, Mom. You taught me that we don't become like the people who hurt us. We become better. You saved me, and then you saved dozens of other kids. You didn't let what they did make you cruel or bitter. You let it make you stronger." Tears slipped down my cheeks. "I don't want to save him, Emma. He doesn't deserve it." "I know, but maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is about who you are, not who he is. You're a person who saves lives. That's your thing. That's what you do. And maybe you need to do it this time, not for him, but for you. So you can look in the mirror and still see the person you fought so hard to become." "When did you get so wise?" Security was waiting for my signal. I could have had Derek removed. Part of me wanted to, but another part, maybe the nurse in me, needed to know. I pulled her into a hug, holding my daughter who understood more about grace and strength than I did. The next morning, I called the transplant coordinator at the hospital Derek had mentioned. "I need to schedule testing for a potential kidney donation." It took 2 weeks for all the tests and evaluations, blood work, tissue typing, psychological screening. I went through all of it feeling numb, disconnected. This wasn't about forgiveness or reconciliation. This was about being able to live with myself. The results came back. I was a perfect match. Of course I was. The transplant coordinator connected me with my father's medical team. They wanted to schedule a meeting, but I refused. Instead, I sent an email outlining my conditions. I had them drawn up by a lawyer, made them legally binding. My conditions were simple and non-negotiable. First, they would establish a trust fund for Emma's college education. Whatever money they had left, it went into that trust. Every penny, the house, the savings, everything. Emma would get the education they tried to deny her by refusing to save her life. Second, they would sign a document admitting what they did. Not a public statement, but a notarized affidavit detailing their refusal to help Emma, the amount they spent on Derek's wedding, and their subsequent abandonment. It would be placed in my attorney's files. If they ever tried to claim they were loving grandparents or attempted to contact Emma without her consent, the document would be made public. Third, Derek would volunteer with my nonprofit for a minimum of 2 years. Not token work, but real commitment. He would help families navigate the system, assist with fundraising, and face daily reminders of what he almost destroyed. Fourth, and most important, after the surgery and recovery, they would leave me alone. Forever. No phone calls, no visits, no attempts at relationship. They would sign away any grandparent rights to Emma. They had their chance at family, and they chose money over love. That choice was permanent. They had 48 hours to agree, or the offer disappeared. They agreed to everything within 6 hours. The trust was established. $450,000. Everything they had left after selling their house and liquidating their remaining assets. It went into an account for Emma's education. The irony wasn't lost on me. More than the wedding had cost. More than they said they didn't have 7 years ago. But I didn't care. Emma would go to any college she chose, study anything she wanted, without the burden of debt. The affidavit was signed and notarized. Derek showed up for his first volunteer shift at the nonprofit looking terrified and determined. The surgery was scheduled. I met my father once before the procedure. Just once, at the hospital, with medical staff present. He looked terrible, gaunt, gray, barely alive. He was connected to machines, his body failing. He tried to speak. "Elena, don't." I held up my hand. "I'm not doing this for you. I need you to understand that. This isn't about you deserving to live or me forgiving you. This is about me being able to look my daughter in the eye and know that I didn't let someone die when I had the power to save them, no matter how much they hurt me." "Why?" His voice was barely a whisper. "After everything? Because Emma is watching how I handle this. And I want her to learn that we can acknowledge when someone wronged us, that we don't owe them forgiveness, but we also don't have to become cruel to prove a point. I'm saving your life because I'm a nurse, because I can live with this decision, and because I refuse to let your failures turn me into a person I don't respect. I was wrong. About everything. The wedding, choosing Derek, not helping Emma. I was so wrong. Yes, you were. And you'll have to live with that. You get to keep living, to watch the years pass, knowing that your daughter was a better person than you ever were. Knowing that the granddaughter you let nearly die turned into an amazing young woman without you. Knowing that everything good in my life, I built from the ruins you left. That's your burden to carry now. Not Mina." He had no response, just tears on his hollow cheeks. The surgery happened on a cold morning in December. It was routine, as these things go. They took my kidney and gave it to him. The transplant was successful. His body accepted the organ. He would live. I recovered in a different wing of the hospital. Derek visited once, thanked me quietly, and left. My mother sent flowers with no card. I had them given to other patients. Emma came every day, bringing homework and gossip and normalcy. My coworkers sent care packages. The families from my nonprofit flooded me with messages of support. I was surrounded by the family I had chosen, the people who mattered. 6 weeks later, I was back to normal. The trust fund was complete and irrevocable. Derek was showing up for his volunteer hours, actually doing good work. My parents moved to a retirement community in Florida. They sent one letter, not quite an apology, but close. It read, "We were wrong. We failed you in every way that mattered. We don't expect forgiveness. We don't deserve it. But thank you for being better than we were. Thank you for giving us a chance we didn't give Emma. We'll honor your conditions. You won't hear from us again." I filed the letter away and never responded. Life continued. Emma thrived. She got accepted to 3 excellent colleges, all fully funded by the trust. She chose to study medicine, inspired by the doctors who saved her life and the mother who wouldn't give up. The nonprofit expanded, helping more families every year. I wrote another book. Derek completed his 2 years of volunteering and asked to stay on. I let him, with strict boundaries. He was trying to be better. That mattered. One afternoon in May, Emma and I sat in our backyard, celebrating her 8th anniversary of remission. It was our tradition. Cake, silly decorations, gratitude for another year of health. A woman approached us at the park where we had taken the celebration. She looked nervous but determined. "Excuse me, are you Elena? From Hope for Tomorrow nonprofit?" "Yes, that's me." Her eyes filled with tears. "You helped save my son 2 years ago. The fundraising guidance, the resource connections, the support when I was drowning. He's cancer-free now. 8 months in remission. You're a hero. You saved us." After she left, crying and thanking me, Emma turned to me with that knowing smile. "You know what, Mom?" "What, baby?" "They tried to break you. Grandpa and Grandma and Uncle Derek. They chose a fancy wedding over my life. They spent $370,000 on one day, but wouldn't spend $80,000 to save me. They abandoned us when we needed them most. They tried to destroy us. But look at us now." She gestured around, at the life we built, the work we did, the families we helped. "Look at what you created from that pain. They wanted you to fail. They wanted you to just accept their rejection and disappear. Instead, you saved me, saved yourself, and saved dozens of other families. We won, Mom. We really, really won. I looked at my healthy, brilliant, compassionate daughter and felt something shift in my chest. She was right. The victory wasn't in the kidney donation or forcing them to acknowledge their failures. The victory was in surviving, in thriving, in turning betrayal into purpose. You saved him because that's who you are, Emma continued. Not because he deserved it. And that's why we won. Because you refused to become like them. You refused to let their cruelty make you cruel. That's the real triumph, Mom. You stayed good. You stayed strong. You stayed you. I pulled her close. This daughter who nearly died, who survived, who understood more about grace than anyone I knew. Some people will fail you in the worst possible ways, I said softly. They'll choose money over love, appearance over substance, pride over compassion. They'll hurt you so deeply you think you'll never recover. But your response to their cruelty defines who you are, not who they are. Emma nodded against my shoulder. I saved my father not because he deserved it, but because I deserved to remain the person I fought so hard to become. Someone who chooses life. Someone who chooses compassion. Someone who chooses to be better. And in the end, that's the greatest victory of all. They tried to break me, but I came out stronger. They tried to take everything, but I built something better. They lost their money, their dignity, their family. I gained purpose, strength, and the knowledge that I can face the worst betrayal and still choose kindness. That's why you're my hero, Emma whispered. We sat together in the fading sunlight, two survivors who had faced death and betrayal and came through the other side. Not unscathed, but unbroken. Not bitter, but wiser. Not defeated, but triumphant. The wedding cost $370,000. My father's life required one kidney, but the real cost was measured in character, in choices, in what we're willing to sacrifice for others. They failed that test. I passed it, and that made all the difference. Now, I want to ask you something. If someone who deeply hurt you or your child came back years later needing your help to survive, what would you do? Would you walk away, or would you choose to be the bigger person? There's no right answer, only what you could live with. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, if it made you think about forgiveness, boundaries, or what we owe the people who wronged us, please hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories about resilience, justice, and finding strength in impossible situations. Share this with someone who needs to hear that you can survive betrayal and still choose to be good. Your support means everything and helps these stories reach people who need them. Thank you for listening, for being here, and for being part of this community. Remember, your response to cruelty defines you, not them. Stay strong, stay kind, and keep choosing to be better. Until next time.